This is part 47 of the FZR restoration, and as I do every morning, I try to post video every morning. I look around at the weather, I ask Karen what my obligations are for the day, and I make a plan. And the plan today is pretty simple. I have the 4CR Bondo, the glass filled, and this is the first time I'm actually going to use that and do an extensive sanding on it. Now the Ninja has quite a bit of body work. That whole tail section, in fact, is body work. A big chunk of it anyway. But it's not the glass-filled Bondo. And I was always worried, and maybe I worry needlessly, that it was going to crack or break or in some way be not that good. Well, it's held up, but I think the 4C Bondo, 4CR, I never can get used to saying that word. I think that's going to be even better. So I'm getting a nice early start. Karen has the coffee brewing. The battery chargers are all flipped over. And it is really cold this morning. It's nowhere near 40 degrees. It's about 36 degrees and it's chilly. So I planned out the day. The day is going to be with Karen. Our grandson is coming over later in the day. And I have basically the whole morning to sand Bondo. So that's where we are right now. It's a very easy plan too. You just ask Karen what I'm able to do today and she makes the plan for me. It's a good system. Now, I've only used this so far on little jobs that, well, I don't think it was critical, but it was definitely better than the stuff that I used before. But glass filled, now see, here's one of the first things I noticed as it's on a drying table. This is razor blades. If I let Miles, for instance, play with this, it's got a real rough, doesn't matter, of course, in the final job. You just got to be aware of it. But this is really a whole different world of Bondo, and I think it's a whole lot better, especially on a job like this where we're going to be using a lot of it. So the first thing I did this morning, I come out and I put a couple of staples in a towel, and this is just, I've just made myself a poor man's work table. And I look at the clouds rolling in and I'm wondering, but I want to get this done even though it's really cold. I want to do as much of this grinding outside as I can just to keep the shop clean. Now because there's so much Bondo, and I did let this dry overnight under a heating vent, just a habit. I'm sure that's not necessary, especially if you live in a warmer weather climate, but it is really cold out there, and I was afraid that if I didn't bring it in last night, let it warm up, it might not sand out the way it's supposed to. Steve's job, the Ninja that we're working on, is ready for his striping. I don't think we're going to hear from him today. He was at the bike show and he's got a lot of other things, and plus he's got to answer to a higher authority to make money. So this is what we did yesterday, and I ground this down pretty well, and you see it's still dusty from all that. And I'm looking at, if this were the old style Bondo, I wouldn't be as concerned. What I want to try to do is, this Bondo has a different characteristic. It seems like it's a lot stronger. I guess that's going to be a good thing. But now, if I were doing this by hand, I would have these long shaping things like you see they use on cars. Well, I don't have any of them. I don't do cars, of course. But what I do have, I'm going to do this by eye, by hand. Probably have to do it over 2 or 3 times, especially in this area up here. But for my benefit, I've done a lot of carving in my life, and I've done a lot of sanding, and what I usually do is, when I'm working a part, I don't look at it as much as feel it. So I'll have the power sander outside, I'll do some sanding, and I'll feel it. And it's your hands, especially if they have a rubber glove on, I can feel the shape. Now, it's an acquired skill, I know, but from having done it for a lot of years, probably over 50 years, carving balsa wood, making molds, that feel for getting that right, that shape just right, and then to get it to match the other side. It's going to be labor intensive. I know there's going to be spots I want to go back over 2 or 3 times, but I think having this Bondo, this better quality Bondo, is just going to make for just a much better job. Now what I found, one of the most difficult parts of doing this kind of work is if you're working alone, is how to hold a part. And I've come up with some of my own solutions, but none of them are real practical. Putting it in your lap and, you know, trying to trying to put a strap on it somehow or bolt it down, or none of them seem to be really, really good. But we're just going to have to tough it out. As cold as it is out there, it's time to go. So what I put is some 50 grit on one power sander, 60 on the rotary. I just want to see how this is going to cut. And it's really, the wind is blowing. Actually, the wind is in my favor today. So step one, when the Bondo, any polyester resin is totally cured, it powders off. And so now we're going to try to create that shape going in this direction, then this direction, then on a 45, just constantly changing. I don't want to just go in one direction only. So the both power sanders cut just a little bit different, but they both basically do the same thing. And I'm going to work this shape. I want to do this, I'm just trying to work the easiest of the shapes first, and then I'll try to get that roughed in, and then move on to some of the more difficult ones, with more reverse curves in them. And one of the things from time to time that's good is I have a big long sanding tool that acts as sort of like a cutter, and this will just let me pick up any high spots. And little by little, and I'm doing it all by hand, I'm finding any high spots and just working on them. Now as I'm checking it by hand, that technique that I'm using is resulting in, well, it's coming out. Little by little by little. It's just a lot of work. And there'll always be touch-ups on the first coat, but we just want to get the first coat roughed in as much as possible. On the top edge, we're going to do exactly the same as the side. There's no secret to doing this. It's just like digging a hole. And we got to go around the whole perimeter here. Up around here. I'm saving this big indentated spot for the last. I always try to start on something small and relatively easy and work up to the ones that are more difficult. Start to rough this in, I realized that one of the things going to be a real problem here. I have no way to hold this. I'm going to try to figure some way of supporting this tank. I don't know if I can push it up against the house or something, just to make it a little easier. But of course, if you have a helper, piece of cake. And little by little, we're picking up the high spots and just working that shape back and forth in every dimension. Just working it. It's just, and this part of it is just roughing it out. The final part, of course, we'll do by hand, but getting this roughed in, it's going to take a couple hours. Okay, that part is roughed in now. The rest we'll do by hand. We've pretty much got a good start on that anyway. Kind of uneventful. This is going to need a second, maybe a third coat on the bottom because I didn't want to over put the material in there, but we've got this whole side roughed in, and I would say, and this side here, which was a little bit extra work, but this is really going to sand out nice. It's just a lot of labor. It's really good to do. And the wind is blowing, just to make it interesting. That's sanded in just beautifully. Wow, nice. That's roughed in nice. We got the edge on the other side. This is the next part right here. This is great. The sun is out now. It's still about 2 degrees warmer. Anyway, I've saved the last. This one here. Totally roughed in. Now, when I did this, I on purpose just didn't try to fill it all at once because I know it would just be a big glob there and I'd have to sand it away anyway. And the last thing, I've always saved the biggest one for last. Now, because I know this is all Bondo here and this is all it's all wavy, as soon as I see a high spot come through, obviously I can't grind away and put a hole in the tank. So now I'm going to go to the lighter grade of sandpaper, and the rest of this I'm pretty much just going to have to baby in. Just kind of carve it in by hand. Oh, the sun finally came out enough that it's my nose isn't dripping anymore. Anyway, that's ready to take down inside. Do a little touch up on it, and I'll describe what the next step I'm going to do on this. It's going to be called skim coating. Now I'm getting in out of the tundra here. I'm looking around for things, areas that need a bit. Now I see there's one right here that I need to address. What happened, because there's a little, I'll call it a mountaintop here, I'm going to skim coat this whole area and then block sand it in. Any place where I see it was getting thin, and I want to go all around the edge with Bondo now. I'm only going to mix a little bit here because I don't want to stink up the joint. We have the baby coming later today, and I'll air out the cellar, but this will be such a small amount. If I did a big amount like this, Karen might murder me. And this came out nice too, but I'm looking any little areas, and I've got to do it by hand. I can just feel that I don't like it, and I call that, and I'm not sure that's the right word because needless to say I don't do this every day, skim coating. And then once that's done, then it'll be, now we've got all the big stuff done. The rest is going to be all hand sanding and block sanding and getting that ready for primer in the next couple of days. So let me mix up a little bit of our material. Now it seems to work well in this kind of skim coating, not putting on big amounts, is ordinary old business cards, of which we have plenty from back in the good old days. So I'm going to, now this is the thinnest of coats, almost like a coat of primer. There's no thickness to this. Now, just for general information, when you put material, any epoxy, any polyester resin on very thin like this, the thinner you do it, the longer it takes to dry. It doesn't build up any internal heat, and it just slows down the drying time. So it's always a good idea to wait extra. In our case, we're going to wait a lot extra. We're just going to let it sit overnight. Not necessary. We could go out, but we're just running out of time here, and that's... If I get the skim coat on here today, boy, will I be happy. Any place I know that I've got a little imperfection I can deal with, there's one right here. Again, and in this point on, it's just a question of being fussier and fussier. We may have to do this step 3, 4, 5 times. I don't care. It's winter, and time is not of the essence. When you're doing a job where you have to be done at a certain time, it takes a lot of the fun out of it. Now what I try when I skim coat is just to do the minimum. I'd rather do it 3 times and not have to grind away a ton of material. It just makes it easier. And it's almost like paint. It's just, I call it a skim coat. I don't know what the professional body guys. And I don't care either, to be honest. Okay, so I rub my hand anytime I feel. Now I'm going to save the last thing. I'm going to go around the edge, because the edge I really was careful not to pile it on any more than I had to. But I'll skim coat this. This will dry overnight and it'll be just absolutely fabulous. Sanding this will be a piece of cake, unlike today. Today was an ass breaker. Let's be honest about it. Okay, now this piece up here, I do remember this was a little bit of an issue. Right here. But the business card allows you to be real fussy about. You don't wind up putting tons of material on. So that the sand out, even if it's cold outside, the sand out should be a lot easier. But it's that roughing it out that's brutal. So that's pretty much all we're going to get done today. Unfortunately, we run out of time, as we do. No matter how we work the day out, it always seems like the day is too short. But we got all the roughing in, the first coat of skim, and that skim may take 3 or 4 more coats. But we won't rest until it's really, really nice. This tank will be the focal point of the restoration. Now, before I end the video, I wanted to make sure everybody understood what I was trying to do is fill that gap from the, and I'm taking this off a TV screen, of course. This is one of my screensavers. That gap for the clip-ons, which we don't need anymore because we have handlebars. And this, if you look at this close, it's something I can improve on, because that stripe in my vision is going to go right through there with the ladders. So I wanted that part of it to be perfect. I wanted that part there to be perfect. And this area of the tank that we know is it's a multi-curve, very difficult thing to do. But anyway, that's what we're trying to do. It's part of the vision of this job. And all I can say is I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and we'll get to work on this. Well, Miles is coming over. He's coming over here in about an hour. It's always fun. I never regret the time I spend with Miles. He teaches me so much. And if I can only get him to sand this Bondo, but it doesn't seem like that's working out. Anyway, that's the way this job works out. And thanks for watching.